together to pay respects to a fallen brother.
We are remembering fallen Independence police officer Blaise Madrid-Evans, who lost his life in the line of duty.
We thank you for joining us here for this special report this afternoon as we cover the funeral and the procession of Officer Blaise Madrid-Evans. I'm Joe Chiodo.
And I'm Kelly Taylor. The funeral procession has just begun. Family and friends and fellow officers, they've been paying their final respects at the Community of Christ Auditorium today. Now, Officer Madrid-Evans' body is being transported to Washington Cemetery just shortly.
And you can see here live pictures of the auditorium. They are just about to bring his body out of the auditorium. Blaise Madrid-Evans was just 22 years old. Let that sink in. His career had barely started. He was so young. Born in North Kansas City in 1999, graduating from Smithville High School in 2018. He was an emergency responder with American Medical Response for nearly 2 years. You can see officers here saluting as his body leaves the auditorium. In July, Madrid-Evans graduated from the police academy and began his career with the Independence Police Department. And just 2 weeks into the job, he responded to a call and was killed by an armed man. And continuing to give you a live look here as the procession begins, we can tell you right now that it appeared hundreds of police officers from around the metro, from around the entire country really, are showing their support today. As they filed out of the auditorium, you could really see just the massive amount of support being shown to the Independence Police Department as well as Officer Madrid-Evans' family. We just heard the bagpipes playing as his body was brought out of the auditorium. It's being loaded into an emergency services vehicle because prior to working with the Independence Police Department, Officer Madrid-Evans worked as an emergency responder.
And shortly, now that his body has been loaded into that ambulance there that you see, the procession will get started, and it's going to take a little ways around Independence before it makes its way to the cemetery for the final resting place.
And as we know, these processions can take some time. We do have crews spread all across the procession route. We have live pictures of the procession route where we can already see people gathering on sidewalks, sitting in their cars, ready to pay their respects as members of the public to Officer Madrid-Evans as well. Zooming out right now, we can show you a wider picture of the auditorium where you can really see the crowd gathering as his body is loaded into that ambulance to go to the final resting place. We can also report for you that while we were not allowed to bring recording devices into the auditorium, there were no cameras or recording devices to gather sound. We did have a reporter in there, and we will speak with them to hear more about what the funeral service was like and to hear more about what Officer Madrid-Evans meant to this community and the impact that he had at, again, just age 22. When he was killed, he was just starting his field training with the Independence Police Department. He had only worked with the department for 18 days.
18 days, and had just finished up his training, I believe, about 2 months ago. So Career, again, just getting started, not even able to live up to his full potential just yet. We did kind of pull up his obituary, and a lot of nice things were said about Officer Madrid-Evans from his family, and we'll share some of those with you a little later.
And we also have a message from the family that was posted on the Independence Police Department's Facebook page. It reads, "We would like to take a moment to thank the Independence Police and the surrounding communities for their overwhelming love and emotional support during this incredibly difficult time." We can also report something that is worth noting here. Blaise's kidney was sent to another officer in the Springfield area. He is an organ donor, and therefore that is his final act of service, as the governor said yesterday when he provided a statement to KCTV5 that he continues serving even in his death.
And it looks like they're getting ready to wrap things up here at the auditorium, maybe getting ready to get that procession started. Before we joined you all, we did see several police on motorcycles riding up to get ready to, what I would assume, be able to lead the beginning of that procession. And you can see people, doors are closing, they're getting ready to start dispersing. Now, let's take a look at the procession route. Instead of a hearse, Madrid-Evans's body is being carried inside of an AMR ambulance. It's a nod to his service before joining the police department. Now, as Joe said, we do have full team coverage along the route.
And first, to begin, we do want to go to Nathan Vickers. We'll go to him in just a minute, who is live outside of the Community of Christ Auditorium. He's been there all morning long. Again, we'll join him shortly. But right now, we want to show you that wide picture of the auditorium as police begin to disperse to get back into their vehicles. They will go onto that procession route and make their way to the cemetery, Officer Madrid-Evans' final resting place. He is not only supported by his brothers and sisters in blue, but also, as we mentioned, by his family. He leaves behind, of course, in his obituary, it mentioned his mom, a sister, a fiance, so many important people, so many loved ones that are grieving at his untimely and young death.
And if we can we pop back up the procession map, and we can just kind of give you a little outline of where they are expected to be going after they leave the auditorium. The next stop is going to be the Independence Police Department. We do have a reporter there, more people on the scene there, just waiting for the ambulance and everyone else to ride by to show their respects. They
will also swing by Van Horn High School, which is where Officer Madrid-Evans went to high school. We have a reporter there. Or he did not, it's on the route, excuse me, where we have a reporter there as well, where we can expect more people to be lining the streets. I believe it was about 2 hours ago even when we checked in with Carolina Cruz at Van Horn High School, and we had about 5 or 6 people on the street there. So a show of support along the entire route. And
then finally, they'll go to Mount Washington Cemetery. We do have a live picture there, and we were able to see law enforcement up on horseback there as they are getting ready for Officer Blaise Madrid-Evans's final resting place there. We'll have all of that along this route later. And are we able to go to Nathan now?
Okay, so I believe we are. I believe Nathan is standing by as the police crews are beginning to get back into their cars after this funeral procession. Nathan, we thank you for your reporting so far. We know you've been there for quite some time and have been talking to a lot of people. What can you tell us about the funeral?
Well, it's been emotional to watch all of this unfolding. That moment ago where the casket was coming out and the bagpipes were playing, that was extremely powerful, even from this far back. It looks like the crowd is sort of starting to part now. People are hugging, shaking hands, talking to each other. It looks like they're getting into place for the procession. Now, we weren't allowed to bring recording equipment inside the funeral, but we did have a reporter inside. Emily Rittman sent notes about what was said and the kind of things that were said in that funeral. Blaise Madrid-Evans, his two mothers spoke to the crowd and talked about him and how much he wanted to help people over the course of his life. His grandfather also spoke too. He told a story about Blaise growing up on a farm, and even from an early age, he would pretend to be a police officer and he would pretend to chase bad guys out on the farm. But they specified that he never wanted to be the tough cop. He always wanted to be a helper. He wanted a life in public service. So when he graduated high school, he went into to AMR. He was a first responder for a while, and he wanted to go into law enforcement. He always wanted to be that calming presence, that helpful person that would be there with a smile to help diffuse a situation. And we've heard that before from Blaise's teachers and from his mentors growing up here. So a lot of those kinds of stories came out of the funeral service today as well. That procession is getting ready to start. We're hearing horns off in the distance. I'm assuming that will have something to do with this too. We've seen motorcycles throughout the course of the day pulling up, ready to lead that procession. This is going to be a long event and a powerful event to watch unfolding here in downtown Independence. We'll throw it back to you in the studio.
Yeah, Nathan, you talked about all the nice things that were said inside that funeral where our Emily Rittman was. And I'm just looking at the obituary once again. It says he was also known as a sweet, kind, respectful, and loving person. He had a warm presence in the room. His family, friends, fellow officers, and community lost a bright, energetic, sacrificial servant who will greatly be missed. And I mean, from all the people who showed up this morning, you can definitely tell he will be missed.
And we've been mentioning in our coverage that the Independence Police Department was able to be there to show their respects thanks to the generosity and kindness of other departments stepping in. We know the Lee's Summit Police Department, the Blue Springs Police Department, Sugar Creek Department, all covering for Independence officers this morning as they show up to pay their respects to Officer Madrid-Evans. Now, we've been talking about the obituary. Again, it does give a snapshot of the man that he was besides his service. Kelly read part of it. We have another part of it right here. Really unique obituary and a really telling one written by his loved ones. Just listen to this. It described him as an avid coffee drinker, a voracious eater, a notorious refrigerator peeker, a man of fashion who loved computer games and putting sriracha hot sauce on everything. And you read something like that and it really paints a picture of who he was and what he meant to people. And sadly, it's heartbreaking to think about, but those are, of course, his family will think of all he sacrificed, the courage he had, everything he did for this community. But they are the people who will also be thinking of everything I just read. Exactly. The small things, the heartwarming things, the things that they will be reminded of time and time again that will just be so hard to recover from, that we are of course thinking of them as they deal with so much right now.
And of course, because they saw him as he truly was.
Correct.
Versus being out in the community as a police officer, putting on that face, that brave face. They saw him as who he was. And he does leave behind his fiance and several family members. So again, just a sad, tragic event that happened, and very sad for this family this morning.
So as we've mentioned, Madrid-Evans' body is expected to make several stops all along that procession route. The first is at the Independence Police Department, where he just started to serve.
KCTV5's Angie Racono is there for us right now.
And we will get to her in just a moment. She's been there since about 10 a.m. today, where people are lining the streets. Angie has been reporting that he had only worked at the Independence Police Department for 18 days, whenever he was killed by a gunman with a warrant out for his arrest. We can also tell you that he was in his field training. I mean, this was really just beginning. This was the start of a bright, bright future and what very easily could have been a long career with the Independence Police Department, serving our community and making it a better place. Yeah, he was just out of police academy for about 2 months. And right now we're looking at the ambulance here. That is where Officer Blaise Madrid-Evans' body is inside. He once worked as an EMS, so this is why they chose to use an ambulance. And we are going to continue following the ambulance right here until it pulls out of the auditorium and makes its way into that procession route. We can tell you we've been seeing live pictures of the procession, and already there are people gathered, holding signs, flags, wanting to show their respects, not only for him, but for the family, for the brothers and sisters in blue, for all police, not just within the Independence Police Department, but all police officers who have been dealing with violence in this manner. We can report that the Independence Police Department and the community have been mourning. This is not the first time this has happened within the department. They've lost 6 officers in the line of duty.
Yeah, this has definitely just been a trying week for law enforcement officers as they go through this. You know, when one department goes through something like this, they all go through it. I've seen T-shirts or slogans where they say, you know, when one bleeds blue, we all bleed blue. So it's definitely heartbreaking for all members of law enforcement.
And sadly, it's heartbreaking, and it's also the nightmare that they all know could become a reality every day they leave the house.
Yeah.
Just interviewing and talking with police officers' families who have lost loved ones, they say every day they just hope that their loved one comes back home to them. And this is sadly what a fiance is dealing with, what a mother is dealing with, his family members. It is just a heartbreaking situation. Governor Mike Parson has ordered all flags to fly at half-staff for today's funeral as well. He did provide KCTV5 with a statement. He says Officer Blaise Madrid-Evans will be remembered as a selfless individual committed to helping others, and the brave officer's organ donation is extending the life of Officer Mark Priebe. Now, Officer Madrid-Evans' final generous act is a lasting contribution to the public good. Again, that is the statement given to KCTV5 by Governor Parson.
And let's talk about that. It is all happening because Officer Madrid-Evans was an organ donor, and the governor mentioned Officer Mark Priebe in Springfield received his kidney.
Out of all the thousands of people out there that are waiting on a kidney, that Mark was a match is truly God doing what God does.
Last year, Officer Priebe was paralyzed after someone ran over him in the line of duty, and he was just added to the transplant list earlier this month and was getting ready to start dialysis.
He'll forever be part of our family.
I think my goal is I want to be able to honor Blaise in the way I continue to live my life.
So even in death, he was still able to give life to someone else. Earlier this week, we heard from the fallen officer's family for the first time. In a statement, they say, "We would like to take a moment to thank the Independence and surrounding communities for their overwhelming love and emotional support during this incredibly difficult time."
Knowing Blaise's kidney has gone to help another officer brings us an incredible level of comfort and peace. We now want to show you the ambulance that will carry Officer Madrid-Evans' body through the procession route and to his final burial. The lights just came on, those motorcycles. We saw the window continuing to go up on the ambulance, and it looks like they are about to begin that procession.
And I was just going to say, you can see that they are now surrounded by 4 officers on motorcycles getting ready to kick things off and start the procession.
So we will follow this ambulance as it makes its way through the procession route. We have multiple crews spread all along. We have one at Van Horn High School. We have Angie Racono out at Independence Police Headquarters. We will continue to bring you all updates as this happens. Right now would also be a good time to share a statement from the mayor of Independence, Eileen Weir. She said that our hearts are heavy as we think about the loss of one of our own. Officer Madrid-Evans died protecting our community, and that sacrifice cannot and will not be overlooked. I'd like to thank our community for the support you are showing and the many people that have reached out to ask how they can support the Independence Police Department in this dark time.
And also staying with law enforcement and city officials, just looking at Twitter, Kansas City Police, they put out a tweet this morning. "Our hearts are with Independent Police Department as they honor Officer Madrid-Evans and lay him to rest today." So a lot of support, not only in person here at the actual funeral, but also just online. Everybody just kind of supporting and rallying around this family and also the Independence Police Department.
And as you can imagine, the family is going through such a tough time. They did tell KCTV5, as we continue to try to make sense of this situation and mourn his loss, we ask that members of the community and the news media respect our privacy in the coming days, which we certainly have done and want to respect that. They did share with us that they will do their best to make themselves available because they do find it important to share Blaise's story after the funeral. And of course, even just from reading his obituary, you do get to tell a part of his story already, that he was such a kind, loving, caring man for his family and his loved ones and his community, which clearly he already sacrificed so much at such a young age.
Yeah, he definitely had a great story to tell. He already knew at the young age of 22 exactly what he wanted to do. And when we get a chance to hear from some of his school teachers and school staff that he had contact with early on as a teen, they were already speaking about how he already knew that he wanted to go into the service community.
Yeah,
so he
knew.
already knew at a young age.
His heart was set on it, and it's worth noting that he accomplished it too.
Yes.
He made it happen. He worked hard to get there, and it is just so unfortunate that it ended this way. Now, the Independence Police Department and Public Information Officer Jack Taylor told KCTV5 that for somebody who is 22 years old to lose their life, it is just heartbreaking. Everybody is currently grieving. Everyone is trying to work through it as best they can. And when we cover stories like this, it's unfortunate that once it all ends, and this is what the family experiences too, once it all ends, there's this feeling that it's over. But it's not, especially for these officers that will have to go return to work tomorrow and continue to do their jobs, continue to face, violence in their day of jobs and everything that they encounter. And also this weighing on their minds. It's such a mental toll.
All right, and we see now the ambulance is just now taking off with those police officers on motorcycles taking off around them. And then you also see the cars with the families right behind, getting ready to start the procession here as they head now to Independence Police Department.
That's right. And at Independence Police Department is our Angie Racono. Stick with us, of course, because we will be going live to her momentarily as the procession makes its way there. But right now you can see the auditorium where the funeral took place. That began at 11 o'clock. It ended around 12:30, and it truly did take about 40 minutes for everybody to pour out of that auditorium because there was such a large showing of support. And that'll also be evident in this procession as we see just how many cars will be making their way to these various stops.
No, definitely. There were officers from all across the country coming here. And did I hear we're going to Angie Racono next? Okay, so let's go to KCTV5's Angie Racono. She is in Independence at the police department, which is the next stop on the procession.
Hi guys, as you can see, there are a lot of people that have started to line up. We did see a police car come by, and that was kind of an alert for everyone who's been sitting here in the parking lot and sitting down in the grass to stand up, to be respectful, and to wait for this procession to come by. And you can see across the street, you have different members of different police departments who have now walked outside of the police department to stand here too. What we're seeing here today are some different police departments coming here and helping support the Independence Police Department, Blue Springs, Lee Summit, and Sugar Creek. Obviously, there's a lot of flags out here, and the main flags are flying at half staff. Below that, there is a memorial. It has flowers, cards, candles, different notes for the officer. And then, of course, you have the officer's banner over there that has his picture and his last day of watch, end of watch. And we've been speaking with people here in the crowd. The people who have come here didn't have a personal connection. I think those are the people who went to the auditorium, people who had more personal connections. But we're meeting people who are from Independence who just want to thank this officer. And it's also people from other police departments and their families. We've seen some like Lee Summit t-shirts, just wanting to show their support, because when something like this happens, it really rattles all of the police departments and all of their families as well. So we're here with him. We're waiting for that moment of silence where the procession will come here. It will pause. Everyone will recognize it. We will do the same. And then from here, it will go to the cemetery, and we'll also stop by the high school before it gets to the cemetery. So we're just waiting like the rest of you and watching along. But back to you guys in the studio.
And Angie, you mentioned you talked to so many people who are there just showing their support. We've been mentioning just how young he is, 22 years old when he lost his life. Have many of them mentioned that really stuck with them, that this life was taken just far too soon?
It's one of the first things they bring up is how young he was, 22. It's everybody out here knows his age. And the other thing that we're hearing is people talking about the last officer who died in Independence. He was almost retired, so really just quite a difference. Do you see, are you guys, now we're starting to see the motorcycles, so it looks like this procession is starting to come here. To be respectful, we are going to pause because we know they want a moment of silence.
So that was that stop that we just saw right there in front of the Independence Police Department. And if we can go back out to Angie, I mean, watching it on TV, and I'm sure being there in person, there's totally a different feel. Angie, what did that feel like there for you all?
I mean, it's a very somber moment. I'm going to try to keep my voice down. I am away from the crowd because we want to be as respectful as possible as we cover this. Obviously, there's a lot of people who couldn't be here, would like to see it and show their respects, but we're trying to be quiet as we're here. I mean, you see people holding hands, people hugging. I mean, it's sad, and it's powerful when you see all of the different motorcycles that came by here, because you realize it's more than just Independence that is here supporting them. I noticed KCPD, state troopers, I mean, many people, and you've got, people wiping away tears. I mean, this is just really, really somber. I think sometimes you don't really need the words, and that's why that moment of silence is so powerful, to everybody to just sit, take a breath, and think about what happened. A young officer, a rookie officer, 22 years old, 18 days on the job, and something like this happens. I mean, policing is dangerous work. It's just incredibly incredibly sad, but just a really nice show of support from people who are out here. Some people decided to go out and buy flags that have that blue line on them just to make sure that when that family stopped here, when they looked out their windows, they would see the support here, not just at the auditorium and not just at the school, that they would be here at the police department. So it's really touching to be out here and to be in this crowd.
I was just thinking how that will last with them forever, unfortunately, but at the same time, fortunate.
Yeah.
They're feeling that they can see the impact he made, and that there are people lining the streets, and there are people that really want to show that they do care at a time where, you have to admit that some people are just so frustrated. It's been a tough 2 years. This is only adding to that.
Yeah.
And then to see at least that there are people out there that are caring, that want to support him and want to show that they're there for the family, that probably means the world to that family. As the ambulance makes its way on the procession, it will now go to Van Horn High School. That's where our Carolina Cruz is. She just tweeted a minute ago, and this puts some perspective to all the police work that they really do in the community. It's not just, catching criminals. It is also the work they do with students for education, the relationships they build, fostering that relationship with young kids in order to better them into their future.
Community policing.
Exactly. She said that a teacher she spoke with there says that this is why it's important for them to show support. So that's where Officer Blaise Madrid-Evans is heading next. He will head to that high school. The City of Independence isn't the only community in mourning either. Officer Madrid-Evans grew up in Smithville, so there are so many heavy hearts there this afternoon.
So he graduated from Smithville High School in 2018 and was part of the Northland CAPS program. Faculty and staff there were not surprised by Madrid-Evans' pursuit of a career as a police officer.
He had one of those hearts that he genuinely loved the people around him.
He did have such a servant heart, and I could tell he would want to help people.
Jennifer Robinson is a counselor at Smithville. Stacy Sapp sponsored the Interact Club, which Blaise was a member of. They shared their pictures and memories of the young man volunteering at local nursing homes and other places in the community. Outside of school, he worked for Dan Udall at Chops Barbecue. Udall used to work in law enforcement as well. He says Madrid-Evans always talked about pursuing a career in public service.
I was proud of him, and I knew he was going to do well. Whatever he wanted to do, he was going to be the best he could be at it.
Well, people who knew him say that there is nothing worse than losing a kind-hearted young man to violence.
And we also can tell you just 5 minutes ago, Mayor Quentin Lucas with Kansas City, Missouri tweeted out, "May Officer Madrid-Evans rest in peace." Just looking at tweets come in, there are many people just tweeting how emotional it is seeing the city show up in such a strong way. We do want to get you back out to Carolina Cruz. She is live at Van Horn High School, another stop along that procession route today. We see people behind you as well, Carolina. What did they have to tell you?
Yeah, these are teachers and staff here at Van Horn High School that decided to come out to show their respects. Students are off school today for a developmental day for teachers, but they did take the time to come show their support. And something to keep in mind is that these teachers and staff, they work alongside the Independence Police Department. These officers, they end up being resource officers. They also provide that educational component when it comes to teaching them about drugs, when it comes to teaching them about alcohol. And so these teachers decided to come out and just show a little token of their appreciation for the department, let them know that they are with them today on this day, which is a difficult one for the Independence Police Department. And one of the teachers that I spoke with, she teaches history, she also teaches law, and she says that within the past week, she has had a high volume of students inquire about, how do I become a police officer? She says that they bring up Officer Blaise Madrid-Evans being so young and setting the example for them, and it's just their way to sort of pay it back. And if you really look at the ages, these are high schoolers. They might be 17 or 18 in some cases. That's not far removed from 22, which was the age that Officer Blaise Madrid-Evans was at his end of watch. And there are also community members that are lining just the other side of the street with flags. They have also come out to show their support. I spoke with one woman who served in the military for years. She says that her family is a long-time military family, and she says that just like the military, it doesn't matter whether you serve abroad, whether you serve your local community. She says it's all one big family, so she would not miss this procession today for Officer Blaise Madrid-Evans. She says unless you're really in that environment, unless you have served, you don't understand how close these officers become so quickly. And so she is out here showing her support and also paying her respects to the family, to the officers, and to the community who is experiencing and going through this. And they've already shut down part of the road here at Truman and Winter Road here in Independence, just across from Van Horn High School. We've already had one cruiser come by and kind of signal that the procession is coming. From here, they will go off to the cemetery, Mount Washington Cemetery, where they will have that graveside service for Officer Blaise Madrid-Evans, and we are expecting some more officers, as well as the community and of course the family, to be there just in a few moments after they go by this location.
Thank you, Carolina. What we're seeing right now is actually at the Independence Police Department where the procession line is going through. But Carolina is at Van Horn High School. Typically, that's about a 23-minute ride. So they have quite some way to go. But Carolina did say that she saw cruisers coming through. I believe we may have seen a police officer in the middle of the street there directing traffic. But earlier this morning, you know, there were just a couple people, but people are definitely started to trickle into that area. People lining both sides of the street waiting to view the procession and be a part of this. And again, this is the Independence Police Department that we're looking at right now as the car line, the procession line, is going through on their way now to Van Horn High School.
And you mentioned about a 23-minute drive, and if Carolina has already seen some cars making their way there, or at least heard them, that of course is just the beginning of the line, and we saw hundreds of people inside that auditorium, so you can expect through this entire procession, it will take quite some time. So many eyes are on Independence, not just within our own city and metro, but the state and the entire country. We have officers from all across the country showing up as part of this processional route. We know that Governor Parson was in Independence yesterday, meeting with the family of Officer Madrid-Evans to pay his respects.
Unless they're just blocking the road.
And we can also tell you right now that this is where the procession is making its way towards Carolina. Carolina, if you can hear us, is that correct? You're starting to see these motorcades make their way through?
Yeah, so we're starting to see officers on their motorcycles. The road's been blocked off now for a couple of minutes just to make sure that, you know, the procession goes through here without any issues. So these are officers. I'm trying to see if they are with the Independence Police. But yeah, so a couple of officers making sure that they're lining the street here alongside the community, but then also their KCPD, that's who they are with. That's the department that these officers are with. So yeah, the procession should be coming through shortly here. It's about a 10-minute drive from the police department to Van Horn High School, and that's roughly about the time that they started showing at the Independence Police Department. So this is the front of the line for the procession.
So Carolina, you were just trying to figure out what department those officers on the motorcycles with, and we did know earlier that everyone at the Independence Police Department was able to get this time off so that they could attend the funeral.
Correct, and that was thanks to the generosity, kindness of several other departments, including Lee Summit and Sugar Creek, who stepped in order to allow the Independence police officer to be there for the brothers and sisters of that department. You can see just a huge showing. This is quite the remarkable sight here as police officers make their way on their motorcycles with their lights going. And along this procession route, we will shortly be seeing the ambulance that is carrying Officer Madrid-Evans' body. Carolina, are you still with us? I know that the procession is continuing to make its way through, but we did see the ambulance pass by, and we asked Angie the same thing. But if you could just describe for us what that moment was like, what people in the crowd were doing, and kind of the overall feeling as they did watch this fallen officer make his way through.
Yeah, it's absolute silence. People are, holding their hands to their heart, holding up their flags if they brought one, saluting. So, yeah, it's definitely a somber moment, but also one of great respect for the officer. It's definitely a special moment for the community to be able to come together in this moment.
And I don't know if we actually showed, but I'm looking at, okay, we are now going to go to Mount Washington Cemetery. This is where the procession will end this morning. This is where Officer Blaise Madrid-Evans will be laid to rest.
And do we have that Mount Washington Cemetery shot? Oh, this is it. Okay, this is the Mount. Got it. Thank you. Our producers in the control room letting us know. This is the ambulance carrying Officer Madrid-Evans as it heads to its final resting place. You can see it is still surrounded by those 4 police officers on their motorcades, on their motorcycles, making its way to the cemetery. Earlier today, we saw some officers on horseback there preparing for his arrival.
We're just going to take a look here. I mean, so much support from officers, law enforcement, people on the streets, just showing their support to the family and to law enforcement just all over.
Such a tough day for the community of Independence, especially for that department, but really for the entire metro as we mourn yet another police life lost to violence, another family left without their loved one. The family, of course, right now asking for respect and privacy, which so many people have given them, of course, in this tough time. But they say that after all of this is over, they do want to share his story because he was such a great, great man and a loving man that was just taken too soon. Again, if you're just joining us, this is the funeral and the procession for Officer Madrid-Evans with the Independence Police Department, shot and killed in the line of duty at just 22 years old, just 18 days into his time with the Independence Police Service Department, and just starting his field training with them as well. So early in his career.
Yeah, he was only on the force for about 18 days, I believe is what it was. And then 2 months rather, just out of police academy. So, I mean, not even having the chance to really get his career started. But if you listen to everything that we've said earlier today, either from his family, from officers who may have known him, from people that have followed him through his school career, he knew at a young age that he wanted to be a part of the service community. So just the fact that, let's take a step back, be grateful for a moment that he even had the chance to go into his career field. I mean,
that he kept people safe in doing so. That can't be overlooked. Not only was he a member of the police department, but before that, if you're just joining us again, you may be wondering, well, why was he being carried to his final resting place in an ambulance? Well, that's because he served as an emergency responder for years as well before joining the police department. So just a last showing of respect and thankfulness for all of the work that he did through that line of service as well.
And we know police officers from all across the state, all across the country, they are here to pay their respects. And you can see just this line of cruisers here, just from different places around the area and around the country coming here to Independence to show their respects to Officer Blaise Madrid-Evans. And again, this here is Mount Washington Cemetery, where he will be laid to rest later this morning, or afternoon rather.
And you can see the giant showing of support as we've been bringing you this coverage. Hundreds of people in the auditorium, along that procession route. There's certainly hundreds from place to place along each stop. The amount of police officers on bikes showing their respects. And then something else worth noting, if you aren't watching us on Facebook, but you're watching us on air, on our Facebook stream, you can see the comments just pouring in, offering their condolences to the family, thanking him for the ultimate sacrifice. We have somebody commenting that they're watching from Ireland. Far-reaching the impact that he has had and the message that it is sending about the importance of his job, the hard work that they do, and the scary work that they do for their family, their loved ones, and themselves. I mean, they walk out of their home each day wondering if they'll be coming back, and he is a prime example of that, and unfortunately taken way too soon.
Okay, so we do want to wrap up our coverage here, and out of respect for Officer Blaise Madrid-Evans' family, we are going to leave you now. So thank you for joining us for this special report. Join us again this afternoon for continuing coverage after the funeral at 4.